Good. We good. What's up, gang? Welcome to Room and Board. My name is Chris George, and today we are taking a look at the top 10 games to play with people who hate games. Now, how could you possibly want to play with these people? These horrid infestations of sadness. These monstrosities of human despair. I don't know your life. Well, maybe you're a kind soul who believes in redemption. Maybe you believe people can change. Or maybe you're just related to them and want this Thanksgiving to go by a little less excruciatingly. Whatever the case, these are my top 10 picks to entice those walking abominations into seeing the light. And hopefully you might have a good time as well. Because choosing the right game is key to getting people into the hobby. You may love games that take 4+ hours, but if you subject your friends and family to this, they will never trust you again. So the goal of this list is to find games that keep the eye rolling to a minimum when they're suggested. What I try to do to entice new gamers into playing with me is, depending on the person, to try to assuage their fears and elevate their excitement. Because I feel generally the pushback for games is people think they're going to be too boring, not fun, too long, or too complicated. Because that 2-hour conversation you were just having about World War II was such a riot and a half. So instead, isolate those fears and pick a game that goes against them. Pick a theme that they might enjoy so they can get wrapped up in it and forget that they're just moving pieces on a board. A good theme can go a long way. Emphasize, oh, it's really quick and fun, come on, and then deliver on that promise. Pick something simple so they don't get overwhelmed or feel dumb, because a lot of people have that fear, but that has a decent enough strategy that they feel like they've solved a puzzle and accomplished something. And don't pick a game that you're incredibly good at and you're just setting up your friends and family to be your punching bag for the next hour and a half. But most importantly, with any game you suggest, you need to know the game backwards and forwards. I think almost any game could draw somebody into the hobby. If your friend thinks Blood Rage looks cool and they love Vikings and want to try it out, seize on that excitement, but make sure you know how to explain it efficiently. This applies to any game because nothing quenches excitement quite like watching you fumble with a rule book for 15 minutes as you deliver a 30-minute rules explanation. You're already off to a bad start. You need to be able to seize that excitement and instantly deliver on that promise while they're still interested. And if they're not drawn to something in your collection already, that's completely fine. That's why I'm making this list, with some suggestions that I feel generally hit pretty well amongst non-gamers. There should be something in here for every person. Now, I'm not mentioning Carcassonne or Ticket to Ride, because you've probably already thought of them. Even though Ticket to Ride is great to play with parents, especially. My parents love it and have gotten a bunch of expansions, probably one of their favorite games. And even though Catan was my gateway game and got me really interested in the hobby, I don't think it's great here because it can be too long and people can get blocked right away and have to sit there for 2 hours and watch everybody else have fun. While I've introduced many people to the hobby through Catan, and I think it's a great choice for certain people, I don't think it's a great choice for people who actively hate games. And that's the distinction that I'm trying to address on this list. So first off, number 10, we start with a party game. If you've ever said to your friends, hey, I really like playing board games, and they say, yes, I also like Cards Against Humanity, then this is the game to ease them away from their horrible opinions and into the light. And that is Telestrations. This is a game that will convince your friends that you know how to have a good time and to put their trust in you for games further down the line. If you haven't heard of it, plain and simple, it's broken telephone, but with drawing. You'll get a prompt, you'll have to draw that prompt, then pass it to the person next to you. And then you'll have to guess what the person to the other side of you was attempting to draw, and you'll write that down, and then pass that to the next person. Then you draw the prompt that someone else has just interpreted, and so on and so forth. If you want a night filled with laughter, this is the way to go. It's such a solid game. There's a way to keep scoring to get points, but I don't know a single person who even plays that way because it's just so fun and funny to see what other people drew and what they thought you were trying to draw. I'm horrible at drawing, and this is the optimal way to play, is with people who are bad at drawing, because it's just a riot. A lot of laughs. It plays 4 to 8. I'd probably recommend it with 6+, because then you have a little bit more elements to the chain, but it's still just a really solid pick, and it doesn't feel like you're playing a board game, which is important. At number 9, we have our bluffing category. And I'm including this here because I played this the other night with people who aren't big gamers, and we had a great time. And that is this little game called Cockroach Poker. Super easy to learn, really cheap to pick up. You have a bunch of bug cards in your hand. You pass one to someone else and you say, this is a blank, this is a cockroach. Then they have an opportunity to guess if you were lying or telling the truth. If they get it right, that card goes back to you, face up in front of you. If they get it wrong, it goes face up in front of them. The first person to collect 4 of a kind loses and everybody else wins. If you're unsure, you can look at the card that was passed to you and then pass it to someone else around the table saying, this is a cockroach, or changing it up saying, no, this is a rat. This is one where you want to set the tone and pace, because when you get 3 or 4 or 5 in a row really quickly, it's just very funny. If your crew is open to slightly more complicated rules, I would also recommend Coup, because I've successfully introduced this to people who weren't gamers and they have gone on to become gamers as well. When I was on tour, we played this every lunch for 3 months straight and didn't get sick of it. And in fact, they loved it so much, one of the members of our cast made a version with all of our faces on it, which I treasure deeply. So Cockroach Poker, Coup, I'm putting these kind of in the same category. Light, quick, bluffing games. Easy to get people engaged. Number 8 is for people who want a story or want something in which they can get wrapped up in. And that is Betrayal at House on the Hill. Not Betrayal at Baldur's Gate, because I find the haunted house theme is better for drawing people into the hobby. People tend to shy away from the fantasy genre, and the haunted house just clicks a little bit better. You're exploring a haunted house, but at a certain point, one of you will get possessed and become a betrayer and try to kill everybody else in the house. This game is theme, and is going to give our game haters a game that they've never experienced before. And yes, this one is tenuous because the rule books really aren't that great, so you need to be familiar with it. And one person does have to go off by themselves and figure out the second half of the rules if they're the betrayer. But if you have someone who's not into that, it's really easy just to say, hey, we'll switch characters, I'll go be the betrayer, you guys can all team up against me. I guess I don't think about that much because whenever I play this game, I will inevitably be the betrayer. I think I've been on the good team once. This is a game that will draw people in, is really thematic and unique, and it's not going to matter if you get a few of the rules wrong. Just play it thematically and keep on moving, because what matters is the experience. And if mistakes are made, who really cares? Because you've gotten people to play a game that they may not have played otherwise. Moving along to number 7 on the list. Number 7 is a game that I actually have not played. I know, why is it on this list? Because watch a single playthrough and you'll be able to know everything you need to know about this game, and that is, let me get it, Terror in Meeple City, formerly known as Rampage. You're giant monsters flicking your little disc around the city, trying to get close to buildings so that you can drop your big monster figure on the buildings and just smash it all to smithereens. Or pick up buses and throw them at other monsters to collect their teeth. I think dexterity games are generally pretty good in terms of getting people involved in the hobby because they're so tactile, right? Especially flicking games like Catacombs and Crokinole. But this one gets my pick overall. While this may not be the best COVID game, since one of the actions is literally blowing towers over, who's not going to be attracted by this premise? It's so simple. You're giant monsters trying to eat a whole bunch of people. The games will go quickly, certainly more than Catacombs, which is a really good game, but is a little long and complicated to be on this list. And it's a great theme, and I don't see anyone who's not going to have fun with this game, regardless of who wins. This has been on my list to grab for a while. I think it might be between print runs right now, so you might have a little trouble finding it, but keep your eyes open for it. I don't know necessarily about the longevity of the game because it is light, and that's also what I've read a little on the Board Game Geek forums, but I don't know, to me it looks really fun, and that doesn't matter here because it's serving as an introductory to the hobby for people who otherwise may not get into it. Number 6 is a game that I have struggled to enjoy, and that is Cosmic Encounter. Now use this recommendation with caution. I find space themes in general are one of the harder themes to get outsiders interested into, unless they're particularly interested in space and sci-fi already. And I wasn't really a big fan of this game when I initially played it, and I've since realized that Cosmic Encounter is only fun when you have a wild card around the table. In some instances, this wild card may be alcohol. There's not a lot of strategy to this game. On your turn, you flip up a card, that tells you who you're going to attack, then you say, hey, ally with me to attack this person. And they say, hey, ally with me to defend against this person. Then you pick one card from your hand that's got a range of 0 to 40, and you say, who's got the bigger number? For the longest time, I was utterly confused as to why this is in the top 10s of so many prominent board game media. How have they tapped into this fun that it seems to completely elude me? Because it kind of felt boring and random. I know I'm not selling this very well, but the last couple times that I played it with people who were drinking. And everyone had a great time because we weren't concerned about making necessarily the optimal move. We were more concerned about using our unique alien powers to just screw with everyone else. I wish there were more cards out there in the game like this one from, I think, past editions, where if you have it in your hand, you can secretly steal cards from the top of the deck as long as nobody catches you. That, to me, I think captures the essence of what Cosmic Encounter is trying to achieve. And that essence is a fun one. But if you play it strategically and logically, I just don't think it works. Or it hasn't yet for me. I still don't think it's the be-all and end-all best game out there. I think it's just fine. But a lot of people love it, and I can see how it could entice people into the hobby with some random low-stakes fun, and that's why it is on this list. At number 5, we have Chronicles of Crime. This is the 1400. I have the base game, which I lent to some friends. This is the only co-op on this list because, contrary to popular belief, I don't actually think co-ops are that great for involving people who hate games, because there's no reason for them to get involved in the action. One player can just take over. They'll always look to that one person, say, what should I do? I don't know what to do. But for this, you're actively solving a mystery together. And since it is such a unique mystery experience, since you use your phone to search the scene and scan the cards and look for clues, I think it's easy for people to get a little bit more on board. And if they're a little bit more shy, they can take a back seat, but they still will be thinking about the mystery and contributing and can search the scene. If anyone's ever expressed interest in escape rooms or true crime, this might be the way to lock them in. Definitely worth a look if you haven't. Both versions are great. I think the 1900s are out now. It just gives consistent quality, and they're lots of fun. Number 4 is something that's my new hit for parents, and that is Azul. Now, this is the second version of Azul, Stained Glass of Sintra. I would probably recommend the first version of Azul because it's a little bit simpler and still gives a great puzzle. I like them both, but I'd go for the first one initially because it doesn't have that modular player board, which I personally like. I think it adds a little something extra to the game, but for newer players, simpler is generally better. It doesn't play very long, it's really tactile, and it gives you that sense of solving a larger puzzle that we talked about before. You'll feel like your brain has been relaxingly massaged after a game. There's a reason why a new version of this has come out almost every year since its release. It just hits. It does just enough to leave people feeling satisfied without overstaying its welcome. And my girlfriend's parents love this game, and they do not play a lot of games, but they actively play this one. I think also something like Splendor or Sagrada could fall into this category as well, if you have those. They do similar things. All of them have a great tactile nature, but if I had to choose one, I'd opt for Azul or Splendor if you have Splendor with the heavy chips, because those just feel so good. Now, number 3 might be my most complicated on this list, but it's still not too complicated for people to pick it up. It's kind of right at that threshold. This is for the people who love nature, appealing to the serene, beautiful gamer. And that is, of course, Wingspan. What list could be complete without Wingspan? I can't say much more on Wingspan that others haven't said already. It just is such a solid game, and the theme is so unique that it brings people in, especially those who think board games are all abstract chess or heavy fantasy themed. If you already thought of Wingspan and you think I'm copping out, well then let me suggest Parks, which I don't own but have played a few times, which can do a similar thing. Gorgeous art, great components. I personally enjoy Wingspan a lot more, which is why it gets the highlight on this list, but Parks does for me what Tokaido failed to do. Even with its expansion, and implements that specific mechanic of the player who's in last gets to go in a way that I actually had fun. Entice people with the soothing sounds of nature, and then grab them with the gameplay. Now, number 2, we return to a dexterity game that I have introduced so many people into the hobby with. It is always requested for me to bring places, and that is Meeple Circus. This game is consistently fun. Even on the days where I don't think I'm gonna have fun with it because I'm tired of it and I've played it a lot, I still have fun. And it takes the core concept of what people like to do with their wooden pieces anyway, which is stack them in creative ways, and makes a game out of it. Over the course of 3 rounds, you get more and more pieces that you stack in various ways for points. You'll get unique guest stars. The higher your red meeples are, the more points they're worth. So do you go for the glory only to have everything topple over right as the timer ends? There's also an app that has great, fun circus music and a timer. If you haven't heard of Meeple Circus, I definitely recommend checking it out if you're a fan of dexterity games, or even if you're not, because it's really solid. And finally, the number 1 game for people who don't like games, for people who have no soul, for people who have never seen the outside of a garbage bin. We go back to a party game. And it was honestly pretty close between Meeple Circus and this next pick. But this game, I think it does everything Codenames does, but better, and that is Wavelength. I couldn't end the list with Codenames, come on. With Wavelength, you get a prompt between 2 extremes, good or evil, and then you spin this wheel which will put a marker somewhere between those 2 extremes. And then you have to give a clue to get your team to guess where in the range that arrow is. It's an incredible concept. You still have the team component like Codenames provides, with one person giving clues and the rest of the team being able to collaboratively discuss where they think this marker is, but the rounds are shorter, the potential for laughs is greater, and the components are more fun to look at and interact with than just staring at a bunch of words on a table. No shade to Codenames. I really enjoyed it when it came out. I forget how much I enjoy it whenever I begrudgingly agree to play it again and think, oh yeah, this is fun. But I just think Wavelength just kills it. It's so fun. Every time I look for a copy, it's sold out. And that's because it's the friggin' party game of whatever year it came out of, in my books. So there we have it. Games for people who don't like games. And if none of those work, well, I guess try Dutch Blitz. And if that doesn't work, well, then you just have to accept that you have to cut these people out of your life forever. And it doesn't matter if you see them in various social situations. You don't speak to them. You don't look at them. You don't even acknowledge they exist. That's the only punishment that's fitting enough. What games do you use to bring people into the hobby? Write them down in the comments below. I look forward to checking them out, and they'll be useful for everyone else who's used this video as well. And be sure to like and subscribe, because I told you to, and my word is infallible. Thank you so much for watching. My name's Chris George. I still don't have a catchphrase, so just hope you had a wonderful day. Bye.